Here's our ultimate Tomb Raider tier list. Tomb Raider 1. The game that started it all and redefined the 3D action-adventure genre forever. It was the first true 3D experience that didn't rely on pre-rendered backgrounds, effectively catapulting the PlayStation hardware into the mainstream. For many of us, this was the spark that ignited a lifelong fascination with ancient cultures, from the dusty tombs of Egypt and Greece to the hidden temples of the Incas. It finally delivered the Indiana Jones-style adventure we had all been waiting for, introducing a highly charismatic and lovable female counterpart to the legendary archaeologist. At its core, this is a pure puzzle platformer where this infamous tank controls aren't a limitation, but a fundamental part of the puzzle itself. To survive, you have to master the skill curve of perfectly timed jumps and ledge grabs, turning a hardware challenge into a rewarding gameplay mechanic. We all remember the sheer terror of the first T-Rex encounter. It's such a definitive, pure 90s Jurassic Park moment. For a hardcore fan, this is a masterclass in exploration and perfectly designed, challenging levels. Priceless Treasure. Tomb Raider 2. The sequel that propelled Lara Croft from the depths of silent tombs into the stratosphere of 90s pop culture. TR2 doubled down on everything: more weapons, vehicles, and a significantly higher combat frequency, yet it managed to keep the soul of exploration alive. From the iconic canals of Venice to the haunting wreckage of the Maria Doria and the spiritual heights of Tibet, the variety was staggering. The scenery opened up to much wider spaces and epic landscapes, pushing the engine to its limits. While the gameplay moved away from the lone archaeologist in nature vibe, shifting toward more industrial environments and human enemies, a change that some gamers disliked, the pacing, tone, and level design remained fiercely true to its predecessor. The quest for the Dagger of Xian felt truly epic, culminating in one of the most memorable final encounters of the era. It is a rare moment in gaming history. A sequel that was bigger, more polished, and more ambitious, while still delivering on its original promise and satisfying an already massive fan base. A true masterpiece of its time. Priceless Treasure. Tomb Raider 3. Widely regarded as the most brutal entry in the classic era, TR3 tested the nerves of even the most seasoned veterans with its unforgiving difficulty and limited save crystals. It offered an unprecedented level of freedom, allowing players to choose their own path between regions that satisfied both fans of natural wonders and industrial grit. This installment showcases some of the best, and arguably the worst levels of the classic series. Yes, Lud's Gate, we're looking at you. Yet it also mastered complex level design while introducing a vast array of vehicles, from the high-speed quad bike and the challenging kayak to the iconic minecarts of the deep. What's more, Lara's moveset expanded with crawling and monkey swinging, enabling even more verticality. From the murky depths of London to the freezing waters of Antarctica, the game often pushed the player into the realm of survival horror. While occasionally frustrating due to its sheer complexity, It's a rewarding masterpiece for those willing to invest the time to master its mechanics, and of course somehow survive the London area. This is a game that didn't just challenge the player, it demanded perfection. Golden Artifact. The Last Revelation. Tomb Raider 4 arrived with massive promises, new mechanics, and a fascinating look at a young Lara. Yet for many, it became the low point of the classic series. Let's be honest, we will never quite forgive the developers for removing the iconic Lara's home training level. The Egyptian locations are undeniably beautiful, and the game starts strong. The fight on the train is nothing short of fantastic. However, things quickly take a turn. While the creators aimed for an ambitious, almost open-world feel with interconnected levels, they instead delivered a massive, meandering, and confusing mess. Back in the day, we didn't know anyone who had the patience to finish it, not even with a walkthrough in hand. It's a shame really, because playing it back now, you can see its moments of brilliance. But despite those occasional highs, it remains arguably the worst of the original era. A sprawling epic that simply lost its way in the desert sands. Common Relic. Tomb Raider Chronicles. When it comes to Chronicles, it's a tough debate. Is this the absolute worst of the classics, or just the runner-up? We're leaning towards the latter, but only because it avoids the massive, interconnected mess that made its predecessor almost unplayable. The game starts with a genuinely brilliant concept, a series of short, untold stories from Lara's life, shared by her closest friends as they mourn her disappearance in Egypt. Is she truly gone forever? This anthology format gives the game a unique, somber atmosphere that we truly appreciate. The game itself is flawed. The frustrating targeting mechanics from TR4 are still here, and almost every episode is riddled with bugs. It's a miracle if you can finish a playthrough without a game-breaking glitch, forcing a restart. And let's be honest, the final level, Red Alert, is simply subpar and technically broken. Yet, there's still a strange magic here. Controlling a young, weaponless Lara in Ireland, or fighting through a high-stakes submarine heist for the Spear of Destiny, has its moments. Levels like Deep Sea Dive show us the game that could have been, if only the developers hadn't treated this as a cheap cash grab, stitched together from the leftovers of previous titles. A bittersweet farewell to the engine that started it all. Common Relic. The Angel of Darkness. While the B-Team was busy with Chronicles, Core Design's main developers were already hard at work on Lara's next-gen debut for the PlayStation 2. The anticipation was massive, but what we finally received was a technical disaster. A game riddled with bugs, a clunky RPG-style strength mechanic, and forced dialogue choices that felt completely out of place.
I'm afraid Werner is dead.
Dead?
Perhaps the greatest sin of all was taking our globe-trotting heroine away from ancient ruins and placing her in gritty, urban backstreets. It traded the vibrant exploration for a dark and confusing detective story. Cryptic solutions, stiff controls, and... wait for it. A playable male character with supernatural powers in a Tomb Raider game? It was a total WTF moment for the entire community. On paper, many of these ideas were ambitious. With more time and iteration, it could have been a good game. In reality, it was a broken mess that should have never been released in that state. Ultimately, this was the game that buried the classic era for good. As we struggled through its glitchy corridors, deep down we knew that we would never get a true Tomb Raider game again. Even if the franchise was dug up later, nothing would ever feel the same as those first golden years. Buried and forgotten. Tomb Raider legend. After the disaster of Angel of Darkness, Lara Croft needed a savior, and she found it in Tomb Raider Legend. This was the true rebirth of the franchise, modernizing the gameplay for a new era while trying to keep Lara's iconic charm intact. Gone were the stiff controls, replaced by fluid acrobatic movements and the introduction of the magnetic grapple. The environments were stunning again, from the rainy rooftops of Tokyo to the lush waterfalls of Ghana, all backed by one of the best soundtracks in the entire series. However, the game was far from perfect. It was notably shorter and more linear than the classics. It often traded deep, grid-based puzzles for the cinematic action typical of that era. While the story became deeply personal, exploring the mystery of Lara's mother, some felt the puzzles were sacrificed for a faster pace. Despite these flaws, it successfully restored the dignity of the franchise and gave us the hope that things were finally going in the right direction. Well-crafted remnant. Tomb Raider Anniversary. To celebrate 10 years of Lara Croft, Crystal Dynamics used the same engine and gameplay logic as Legend. On the surface, it looked like a dream come true, but the big problem is that we cannot judge Anniversary as a standalone game. We must judge it as a remake of the 1996 masterpiece, and in that regard, it simply fails. The platforming was simplified to the point of being primitive. The skill of the original was gone. It was replaced by easy automatic jumps and annoying quick-time events. For hardcore fans, these changes made the game almost unplayable. Even though Crystal Dynamics had good intentions, this remake should have never happened. It proves that you cannot modernize a priceless treasure without losing its soul. For those who remember the weight of every jump in the original, this version is nothing more than a rusty junk. Rusty junk. Tomb Raider Underworld. Underworld was the grand finale of the Legend Trilogy, and a final farewell to the classic rebirth. It was the first game built specifically for a new generation of consoles. And it showed. The graphics were stunning, using motion capture to make Lara's movements feel more natural than ever. The game returned to the series' roots with massive, lonely environments and complex mechanical puzzles. From the deep Mediterranean Sea to the jungles of Thailand, the scale was truly impressive. It felt like a real tomb raiding adventure again, focusing on isolation rather than constant combat. However, it wasn't perfect either. The camera movement was often frustrating and the story felt rushed toward the end. The game tried hard to pay tribute to the classic series. It even brought back Natla for a final showdown.
I knew I could set him on a desperate quest to find what I desired most.
While it didn't always succeed, we appreciate the effort. Well-crafted remnant. Tomb Raider 2013. In 2013, the franchise couldn't escape the trends of the era. Following the success of The Hunger Games and Uncharted, we received a reboot filled with shallow modern tropes. Visually, the game was a powerhouse. The dark and gritty atmosphere made Yamatai Island feel truly dangerous. The story tried to be an emotional origin tale, focusing on Lara's trauma and her first kills. It could have worked. But for many longtime fans, this was the biggest disappointment in the entire series. Lara Croft was transformed. She went from a tough, determined tomb raider to a fragile survivor with a bow. There was no unique concept and no soul, just a cheap conformity with the zeitgeist. It felt like the icon we loved was gone, replaced by a generic model that lacked the original spirit. While it was a cinematic success, it killed the Tomb Raider we loved. Maybe forever. Rusty Junk. Rise of the Tomb Raider. The second chapter of the reboot trilogy takes us to the frozen wilds of Siberia. Visually, it looks really nice. The snow-covered landscapes and the lost city of Kitezh are breathtaking. The gameplay is much more refined, offering exactly what a modern action game should. It features tactical combat, large open-world areas, and of course, crafting, which felt like the quick-time event of the 2010s, appearing in almost every major title. But let's face the truth here, this is more of a Naughty Dog-style clone, heavily inspired by Uncharted and The Last of Us, rather than a true Tomb Raider game. It's a sad irony that the Uncharted series, which originally took its cues from Lara Croft, has now become the very blueprint that modern Tomb Raider titles are desperately copying.
Okay, we're ready. On your signal.
Let it fly!
However, if we look at it as a nice-looking modern action experience, it's actually a great one. It is a polished, high-octane ride that is genuinely fun to play for a couple of hours. In this respect, it's a solid game, a well-made blockbuster that entertains, even if it lacks Lara Croft. A fun ride, as long as you enjoy the cinematic explosions and don't think too much. Common relic. Shadow of the Tomb Raider. The final chapter of the reboot trilogy takes us deep into the humid jungles of Peru. After 2 games of heavy combat, Shadow finally brings the focus back to what the title actually promises: real tomb raiding. It features some of the most atmospheric and complex puzzles of the modern era, reminding us why we fell in love with this franchise in the first place. Visually, it is a step in the right direction. The underwater segments and the hidden city of Paititi create a sense of wonder that was missing from the previous reboots. Lara feels more like a seasoned explorer here, stealthy, dangerous, and at home in the dark. However, it still carries the weight of the reboot's flaws. The story is a bit uneven, and it never quite reaches the emotional heights it aims for. The open-worldish, stealth, and Uncharted-like gameplay still press much more on the overall experience than they should. But for the Tomb Raider experience itself, it is definitely the most refined of the 3. It finally respected the series' DNA of exploration and mystery. A solid conclusion that proved, even under the heavy load of a modern coat of paint, the spirit of the classic tombs could still breathe. We can only hope we get more of this in the future. Well-crafted remnant. Do you agree with our list? Which ranking hurt you the most? Fight us in the comments and hit subscribe for more.